Welcome, everyone. I'm Anne Verhallen, co-founder of Art at a Time Like This, here with my fellow co-founder, Barbara Polak. Today, we're very excited to participate in a conversation with Lynn Gumpert, director of Gray Gallery at New York University, and Noel Anderson, artist and director of the summer programming at Steinhardt Department of Art and Art Professions, also at the NYU.
And now I'm honored to welcome Noel Anderson and Lynn Gumpert. Noel Anderson is an artist and director of summer programming at the Steinhardt Department of Art and Art Professions at NYU. He, as an artist, has shown in Europe and the United States, at Studio Museum of Harlem's exhibition, Speaking of People, Ebony Jet and Contemporary Art, and snapshots at UTA Artist Space in Beverly Hills, as well as his survey show, Black Origin Moment, at the Hunter Museum of Art and the Contemporary Art Center, Cincinnati. He is represented by, all right, let's see if I can say this right, Zadoun Bossuet in Luxembourg. He holds 3 degrees, a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Ohio Wesleyan University, a Master of Fine Arts from Indiana University in printmaking, and a Master of Fine Arts from Yale University in sculpture. And I'm really honored that Lynn Gumpert is here with us today, because much of what I know about global contemporary art came from the Gray Art Gallery. Lynn has been director of the Gray Art Gallery since 1997. Among the more than 70 exhibitions she has overseen at the Gray are modernisms, Iranian, Turkish, and Indian highlights from NYU's Abbey Wheat Gray collection. I think, is that the current show?
That's currently at the Block.
Oh, that's currently at the Block. Okay. Inventing Downtown, artist-run galleries in New York City, 1952 to 1965. The Poetics of Cloth, African Textiles, and Recent Art. The Downtown Show, the New York Art Scene, 1974 to 1984. And Mapping Sitting on Portraiture and Photography, a project by Walid Rad and Akram Satari.
All right.
These bios only slightly convey what these 2 individuals have accomplished. So let's start the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lynn and Noel, for joining us. We wanted to start the conversation and kind of hear you speak about the challenges you have faced in the last 3 months, and kind of what you, in terms of remote teaching and remote working, but also like what do you see was your responsibility in facing these challenges in the past 3 months?
Oh, well, Lynn, please, ladies first.
No, please, no. What's interesting is that this conversation really began about teaching, and I was very impressed, like I'm sure all you are, by Art at a Time Like This, which appeared so quickly on the scene. I mean, it was great to have a forum as we were all encountering these enormous challenges about COVID-19 and shutting down very quickly and how to teach remotely. And so I sat in on an early session and then was contacted by Barbara and Anne. And when they asked me if the Gray would like to do some programming with them, I said, yes, that would be fantastic. And I immediately thought of Noel. As you know, as a university museum, we're very student oriented. You know, we're a very small university museum in the middle of this huge cultural capital, one of the world's cultural capitals, not the only one, obviously. So we're this very, very small fish in a big pond. However, NYU itself is a huge pond. And one of the things that we immediately heard, I think everybody heard in terms of students, was especially studio students, artists, either the visual arts or the practicing arts drama students in Tisch School of the Arts. They were the ones who were really facing challenges learning remotely. So given that we want to really focus our program, we decided to focus our programming, really directed towards the students. I thought, I called Noel immediately and said, how is it teaching remotely? What are the students
Right.
encountering? How is it going?
Right.
So I turn it over to you to talk about
Yeah,
that
for
particular
sure.
challenge.
So yeah, as the area head of print media at NYU, it became pretty apparent in January that we were gonna have to figure out different strategies of teaching this process heavy medium. Big, and there's a little fear there, and then I started to think, well, there are different ways in which to literally think about what print is, and possibly ceramics and other mediums in which you need a certain kind of space. As such, I decided to just go with my gut and find theoretical terms that apply to print, or define it as its characteristics, its syntax, and then figure out how to apply those things to everything we do in everyday life, such that we could merge art and life in such a way that the students weren't really considering before, right? So a lot of my students will come to the classroom and it's immediately divorced from real life, right? And I figured at a time like this, when everything becomes super real, why not tap into something they're really dealing with, you dig? Right, so there was that. There's also this kind of ethical dilemma that professors, I think, find themselves in, especially now that the cost of university is so high. I think, well, even if I'm doing Zoom, which I have to do now, I have an ethical responsibility to give as much as possible. So I was still doing the same kind of legwork to provide a certain kind of content that I think was comparable to what they were seeking. You dig?
Yeah.
So there's that kind of thing, but it gets deeper if you're a teaching and you're an artist, because then, oh man, let's talk about that. Let's go into the realities. I'll watch my mouth. Let's go into the realities of what it means to make work now. May I tell a quick story? I hope that someone says yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was jogging over in the South Bronx the other day, about a couple weeks ago, like a week ago, and they had just sent George Floyd home. He had a homecoming. He went home too soon. And in the middle of this jogging in the morning in the South Bronx on a fucking Saturday, I started to cry. I mean, a black man in the South Bronx crying? But no, you're not supposed to do that. And that's when my duty was as an artist was reinvigorated. And I realized as artists, I really think we have a role, a responsibility to use this moment to transform where we're about to go. Does that make sense? I really think it's our duty. As such, it seems to be the way I make my work and the way I teach. I just feel like all these things are our responsibilities, that whether we've chosen them or not, we're here now, so we might as well deal with it.
And how do you communicate that to your students? Because I find in my own teaching that until very recently, most of my students were apathetic about politics. And
Actually, I thought they were at first, because I realized something about this. I was sound like an old man, but this generation of my students, right? I don't think they're really that historical. I think they're ahistorical beings in a sense that, students would say, some of my students used to say, my first president is Barack Obama. I would say, what? How is the first president? They said, no, my first president, right? Because that's the first time they really were engaged. And I have to be honest, I don't have to explain it to them anymore, because, Donald Trump changed all of that. That Wednesday, the morning after he had won, everybody stayed up and stuff. Man, I went right to sleep. And everybody said, why did you go to sleep? I went to sleep at like 9 in the evening. Why stay up? They say, why? I said, because I went to sleep black, I'm going to wake up black. The hell is the difference? But I'll say that I do think that at that moment, on that Wednesday morning, when I walked into my office and my art students were in there crying, that's when I smiled, because I knew that they cared. Let's be honest, as teachers, no matter what level, sometimes you stare into that audience and you're like, is any of this translating to any of these people? Why am I here? And did I go to the grocery store and buy milk today? I don't know. I just feel like that moment won me back, you know? And in terms of like trying to get them to understand their role, I really just asked them every class, what kind of world do you really want to live in? You are the cultural producer, you need to produce that world, you know?
Anne, do you have a question?
I mean,
Actually, may I circle over to Lynn?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I was really curious, like, can you talk about what you imagine the responsibility of institutions like this are?
Yes, they're enormous. I think it's been very interesting. And I've been listening to a lot. And so I'm probably going to draw on a lot of what I've heard as everybody first battled first went into kind of the shock about closing down so suddenly. Nobody really anticipating, at least among my immediate colleagues, that we'd have to close so quickly. And then once we closed quickly, how do you cope? How do you serve your audiences? The same thing. How, Noel is, how do I reach the teachers? Students, how do I connect with the students? How can I convey what I need to convey? And with the museums, and we felt the same. Oh my God, a museum is all about that one-to-one contact between a work of art and the audience. It's all about teaching students how to see visually. It's all about solace sometimes and provocation other times. It's about learning, and it's about that kind of direct engagement that you can have from works of art. And I must say that in a institution that was of enormous help to me very early on was the university and college gallery subsection of the Association of Art Museum Directors. So there were a group of us who belonged to this association who started to meet weekly and talking to colleagues who were in the same situation, scrambling to figure out what they could do, how to make their exhibitions more accessible, was enormously helpful. And so you kind of went into, everybody started to ramp up, of course, online programming and trying to figure out how to work remotely. And that's challenging itself. We all felt very committed, the entire staff, which is small but very close-knit, to making sure that everybody stayed employed, that nobody was laid off. And we were looking, for how we could all contribute. So our preparators are doing amazing work remotely, doing research on the collection, putting together handbooks. So, and then education, of course, Lucy Oakley has done an amazing job of, we had 3 seminars or one big seminar that was scheduled to take place that Friday, the 15th, when everything closed down. And so we've now divided that up into 3 remote things. And then we all kind of collectively went into shock and dismay and shut down from the reality of the murder of George Floyd, and then re-examined, okay, what is our mission? How do we act responsibly? And a little bit of, the elephant in the room, I would say, especially with the big civic museums are, and I'm going to quote here from the Vera List Center for Art and Politics, most of the art world remains a self-congratulatory sphere for white liberals with limited diversity and little politics, where their beliefs are never challenged. Museums are founded on white privilege and wealth. Their collections accumulated via colonial and neoliberal extraction. They benefit from and extend structural inequality. So it's a reality. This is not true only of the museum profession, of course, which, if going to the origins of the museums themselves, but of art history as a discipline as well. Art historians have, it's a relatively new discipline. It was started in Europe, in Germany, in the 19th century, and many curators come from wealth, who grew up with private collections or have access to that. So that's always been, the inherent contradiction of museums which try to be accessible to all. We all want that. I think all my colleagues all want as diverse an audience as possible. We've been trying to work on broadening inclusivity, but the reality is that we are, you know, these bastions really can be bastions of the elite. I must say, I am really pleased to be at this moment working in a university museum as opposed to a civic museum or a private museum, although this is a private university, and that the role of education, you know, is so important, and that we are free, we're open to everybody once we reopen, and that we try, you know, in all of our exhibitions to help students and others really learn things that they might not have otherwise exposure to, and again, to see differently. And so, you know, this is why my colleague, Lisa from the Block Museum has joined this conversation. We've shared these shows as we talked at the beginning, early beginnings. It's been so great to have this dialogue among the university museum galleries, which are for the most part, again, free and open to the public, and that see teaching as such a crucial function of there. The other contradiction, of course, is universities and the American educational system is out of whack and very expensive and, you know, challenging. And so there are all these contradictions that we're trying to address. And I see our role as trying to provide as much information in the world of the visual arts for artists, for students, for people that come. And it's a challenging one.
I know, I mean, my sense and my fear, to be quite frank, is that institutions are gonna come back after COVID, do a series of surface exhibitions about race and diversity, and sooner or later it won't be a sustained critique, but a series of one-offs that will die out or dissipate. I fear that kind of evaporation like I've never feared certain things. My other fear is that, you know, if we repeat these kind of traumas in either in representation form, by which I mean we show these videos as creative events. I think primarily of like Adrian Piper's re-showing the Rodney King video, right? Does that replication or repetition of performance kill or violate again? There's that kind of struggle I'm having with this too. At which point, then I would offer that yes, do the few shows, and then don't show it anymore. But you know, I'm not quite sure that's the answer. I'm really fearful that this is not going to be a sustained change, but rather a series of false starts, if you will.
Yeah, I have to say that in the midst of all the "We Support Black Lives Matter" that I got in my mailbox last week, one was from the Frick. Right. And I thought to myself, is this going to be a one-day thing?
Right.
Or are these institutions going to look at themselves?
I don't know. I mean, frankly, you know, I think one reason I cried the other day when I was out exercising in the morning, right, was because I'm tired. I'm going to say some things now that might upset folks, but that's what it is. White folks, I'm tired. I'm tired of doing all the work. I'm tired of going to the studio and doing that legwork, but I do it. I'm tired of having to tell white folks about themselves. I need white folks to do the work, man. I do it every day I wake up. You can't do it for 5 minutes. I'm tired of turning on Instagram and someone saying, I finally read this book about white privilege. I get it. Come on. The sustaining is not with us, it's with you. It's with you. That doesn't discount the people who are doing the legwork too. We appreciate it, but the system, we calculate every day we wake up to deal with it. I need y'all to deal with it too. You know? But
No, this is,
oh,
yeah.
go ahead, Lynn, go ahead.
This is what I'm hearing also, you know, as I listen, and I do think the profession is grappling with this, what it really means. And I think it's particularly difficult because of the origins. You know, I mean, I'm just going to address museums. I'm not going to address white people as a whole.
That's fair, that's fair.
And I know, you know, myself, that there's still much more learning and reading and accountability that I need to assume to make sustained changes.
But that's the good part though, right? That's the great part, because we have people who acknowledge and are ready to and believe they're ready to do the work, right? We have institutions that are taking chances with artists who are making real radical work, other than maybe Cleveland, who is not doing that right now. I am sorry, Sean, because you are a genius. But there are places out there that are taking real chances, you know, and putting real stuff on the line in terms of the funding and all these other things. At least in the meantime, I'm really hopeful that we can continue that for not just for Black lives, for my LGBTQ folks, for real. Oof, sorry. Going to the church now. I'm so sorry.
No, thank you. No, you were our artist of the day, and you contributed with some works for Art at a Time Like This. Can you speak a bit about the works that you contributed and how they relate to these current events?
Yeah, so I used to go to the Met all the time, like, you know, maybe 10 plus years ago. And my old dealer, God rest his soul, Jack Tilton, used to tell me to go on Fridays. You know, like 10 years ago, nobody was going. So I would go on Friday nights and stare at famous people staring at stuff like, you know, oh, there's Richard Tuttle or something like it's my Beyonce moment. But then I found myself in the tapestry wing and the medieval wing, and I realized I was mesmerized by these objects because for me, they're the beginning of photography or digital imagery by way of jacquard and weaving. And I thought that this object, specifically this French object, the jacquard weaving, had a lot of potential to talk about the relationship between Black peoples and screen culture. Because, you know, this method of weaving is the beginning of what we now know as binary codes. And I thought, well, every time I'm staring at a screen, I'm staring at a weaving. It was very simple. And there's a slew of other little jokes we had behind that. So then I started dealing with images that I thought to myself, these are all misrepresentations of people, right? They're all misrepresentations of Black men, of me, by way of this screen. And they're all structured by a kind of, they're all functions of a higher structure of power, by which mean white supremacy. So why can't I take these objects or these images and weave them into objects that really try to deal with class and gender and sexuality on its own terms, by which I mean the class of a tapestry, you dig? So I think there's that, I feel like there's, is the large die lighting, I think that's in there. I think that's the black and white one with the row of figures.
Yes, correct.
That's my Goya. That's the May painting, right? So you're right, you have everybody going back in a 1 point perspective. This is like a photograph from, I believe, the early 70s, with the police in Philadelphia. They got Rizzo good this time. The police in Philadelphia pulled Black Panthers out of their homes and would strip them, right? They would strip us. It's a sexual humiliation, you know, like there's that story of Eldridge Cleaver and the teenage boy in the shootout with the police, and Eldridge Cleaver's getting naked in the house, and he says, just get naked. If we go out, they can't shoot us because we have nothing on us, you know. And the teenage boy, feeling inadequate about his body, said, no, I'll just take my shirt off. The Eldridge said, man, you got to get butt naked. He take his shirt off. He goes outside with a pair of pants on, the teenage boy is dead. Eldridge is alive. This is the kind of humiliation that Black subjects must go through. And I was trying to bring that to the forefront. So if you look at that one image of a dialyting you have on the right side, half-naked Black bodies, the one peers out, he has agency. In the middle, you have a Black cop with a large, slithering shotgun. It's like the snake. His legs bend like a goat. Violence makes animals of us all. On the far left is you can't really see it until you stare, is a white cop, twice the size as everybody else, but his gun is a lot smaller. The sexual innuendo is there. So I make this kind of work because I feel like this is the best time to do it. it's relevant, you know, and there's so many nodes of interest in there for me in terms of its access, the democratization of certain forms of making. I'm into that kind of stuff. You dig?
I dig, and it was so moving to present your work.
Thank you.
Really fantastic.
Thank you so much. It's hard to make.
Now somebody turned their mood off.
Do we want to open it to questions? I forgot, but I can keep.
We're going to open it to questions in a second. We wanted to ask the two of you, we're very solution oriented. We're looking for artists who offer some glimpse of the future,
Right.
or allow us to reimagine the future. How do you feel about solutions at the moment? Or what solutions are you thinking about?
Yeah, I think that, to be honest, if we just limit our scope to the art world, that's problematic. There are other people who are doing creative acts that we can define as art, or at least aesthetics, that if we paired with them, if institutions paired with them, we'd really be on the fast track, man. But that would also require people to compromise certain things that they have. We have to sacrifice stuff, and I think that's capitalism has a way of making us not want to sacrifice things. At least it makes us have a way of thinking that we need things we don't need. But I think these kind of beginning conversations are nice, and trying to plan out real change, like a 10-year plan. I like plans, you know.
Lynn, do you have anything?
Do you have can you give a little visualization of how you think some of the solutions can look like?
Is that for Noel?
For you, Lynn.
Oh, for us, well, you know, I mean, I do think this, and Noel had mentioned this in the beginning, we're at a really crucial moment to rethink. And if we don't take advantage of this opportunity and really, really strive to make a difference, progress is going to move very, very slowly. And as Noel also warned, we might slip back into platitudes and surface attempts. I think within the industry of the art museum, amongst my colleagues, when I talk across the wide spectrum, and we're again having these Zoom conversations fairly frequently, I do sense, and I'm hopeful and positive in that way, optimistic, that we are really trying to rethink how we can operate and how to instigate real change. Museums again are these really, such elite institutions, and whether or not we can change and become truly more inclusive and listen better and make structural changes. I get discouraged by the amount of work that needs to be done. But I do think that university museums can take charge and try and provide examples for how we can try and make a difference and be more inclusive in the type of work we show. And hopefully, make sustainable change.
Yeah. What are some of these sustainable changes that you guys talk about internally at the moment?
Oh, internally, it's about, diversifying boards, trying to open up the discussion, trying to see more work, be more inclusive in the programming. It's kind of the obvious things, but then also there's also a deep kind of questioning about how can we truly rethink what we normally do and make a difference through self-education and amplify diverse voices and activate, kind of trying to be more proactive in diversifying staff and the board, and again, programming. I feel again, I think every museum And, you know, I'm talking about the smaller museums as opposed to the bigger museums now, because that's my expertise. Is I've always worked in smaller museums, but is to see what is our strength. I mean, I'm very fortunate at the Gray Art Gallery that we have this amazing collection of non-Western, Middle Eastern, and Asian art. And I've learned from that art. You know, there were no books about modern Iranian art when I came to the Gray. And it's the artwork that's, you know, been instrumental in changing me and expanding my vision of how to understand. So, you know, we have that strength, and we continue to try to make that more accessible. And other museums are focus more on contemporary art. We don't focus on contemporary art because there's so many sister institutions in New York City and alternative spaces that do that. So what is your strength? What can you, what can you offer? What can you add to the conversation?
Yeah, I agree. My sense is that, and initially in terms of institutions, like I said before, taking more chances with tough work and tough shows. You know, I was appreciative of the Contemporary Art Center in Cincinnati to give me the opportunity to show Die Leitung for the first time in 2017, right? This way before this was happening, right? You know, students, faculty, and other people would come to my studios and see work that I had made, and still to this day, I've made 10 years ago, thinking it's a response to today, right? So there's that kind of recognition of those kind of gaps, those blind spots in one's vision, by which I mean the institution that needs to be reconciled. Also, you know, clearly peoples of color, or diversity in the pool of curation, diversity in the pool of curators. Oh gosh, a kind of a diversity in that. But I'm also thinking about if in terms of like university, you know, oh my gosh, diversity in the pool of faculty that we hire and give tenure to, right? Also, let's talk about the curriculum is dated and colonial as hell. Like I have students who finally are saying to us, you know, some of our students are telling us, we don't want to read this anymore, right? Where are these representations of us in this literature? So there's that, you know, it's going to take students to stand up and hold us accountable, right? I was so proud when the NYU students in the art and art profession stood up and said, yeah, it's not good enough. They checked us and they said, I'm gonna need y'all to do a little better. All right, and we brought in mediators to help us as a community, as a family, to try to resolve certain situations. And it's not easy, but we did it. And it was some tough time that semester, I remember. Oof. But it worked. I think it's on its way to working. I think those are the things that need to occur. I mean, there's a longer list, but I think those are the few things initially. I'm sure there are people listening like, say this. I can't think of everything, man, shoot.
No, someone asked the question if you feel supported by white faculty.
Some faculty, not all. Some white faculty, not all. NYU has done, at least in my case, has done a really great job of supporting me. I know other friends who are at other institutions who are not nearly as happy as I am. But I also say that, you know, it's hard to be supported by all faculty when we don't all share the same schedules. You know, we all, especially in New York, where everything is like movement, you don't always cross paths. But I do feel from some of my colleagues, yeah, support.
We have a lot of comments.
Not so many questions.
A lot of comments of people agreeing and thanking you guys today for speaking.
Ooh, give me a comment of agreement.
Another question.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Noel. So my question is, why participate in the white straight art world? Fuck it. And another experience. I mean, fuck the white art world. Fuck this like money-making machine. Fuck it.
Okay. I'm with you, I'm with you, baby. I'm with you. So I love you. Yeah. Okay. So as a lot of us know, real cultural shifts are always made in the margins, in my opinion. I mean, like real, like drag was on the margins. Now RuPaul on TV. Hip hop was on the margin. Now Jay-Z and Beyonce are chilling in the loop. There are these moments when that was on the margin gets absorbed into the culture, right? But I think, frankly, that messing with the centrality of that thing is necessary to really push it to the margin so we can take over. I love the margins because a lot of stuff can happen on the side, or a lot of things can happen in folds in the shadows. And I think that's a great place to start to build an arsenal, kind of like, like in action films, when Van Damme gets hurt and then he spends some time rebuilding his body. Well, that's where we're at right now. And we're gonna have to go back to the arena sooner or later and kick his ass. You dig? I think so.
I don't think so. I think, why don't we just fire the white straight art world and create another scene that's more inclusive,
that's fair.
More generating more ideas. I mean, this white art world is based on oppression. Fuck them.
So then what does it look like? What does it look like for those who are tied to it so entangled that if it goes, they go too? Who am I to sacrifice someone else? Well, I agree, but I'm still curious.
Well, who are you sacrificing if you say, fuck the straight?
I don't know. I feel like there might be people tied to the structure that really, really need it. As something as simple as a security guard at the Met who's like, matter of fact, right? I remember when my students and I were in Paris in January, and they were doing the subway strikes, which was brilliant. It destroyed that city. It was frustrating but awesome. And then the day that we wanted to go to the Louvre, half of security didn't come in. Right? That one day, the Louvre financially imploded for that one day. Right? But then I thought to myself, especially now in COVID, there are people who have those jobs who really need those jobs to survive. So if I say fuck that structure, and that structure implodes, well, what do I do with them? Because I got to have a plan for them too.
Well, the structure doesn't just include...
Anthony, we have more people with questions.
Oh, sorry. But Anthony, you and I, let's talk us out at your studio. I'm trying to learn.
All right. Someone asked the question, which I know is problematic, but she asked if you have advice to white artists dealing with these issues. How should they grapple with them?
You gave it already.
That's good. Oh, can you ask that question one more time?
Do I have to?
Please, yes.
All right. Do you have advice to white artists dealing with these issues?
Oh, white artists deal with these issues too? I didn't know that. Ooh, wow. No, I don't know. It just seems it's a problematic question.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, please.
Take the burden off of you for this time once again. I mean, I did hear again on one of the things I've been listening to. Educate, i.e. self-education. Read a lot. Donate whatever funds you have available, or if you contribute works for auctions or whatever you can, to causes that are helping Black institutions and alternative spaces. Try and amplify, i.e. take what you learn and share it with your best friends, and be more active in your political lives.
Those are all great. Those are extensions of my simple answer would be something like, don't dump your white guilt on us.
Exactly. And it's up to us to learn as administrators, as white artists, as administrators, as students, as colleagues. It's up to us to figure it out.
Yeah, it's up to the audience to really want to have that conversation. I mean, not to generalize audiences, but the one thing I do enjoy about the few exhibitions I've been able to have in Europe is that sometimes they're ready to have conversations about the work that I just haven't been able to have on a consistent basis here in the States with an art audience. Right? They're able to, if it's not about the racial issues, which some folks I know that are really interested in having those conversations, then it's about some of the complex formal stuff that some folks of color are doing that people are not recognizing. Especially in terms of, like, if I think about myself, Torquasi Dyson, or my man Leslie Smith III in Wisconsin, we're all dealing with abstract mathematical space. But when you come to the shows, all people want to do is talk about this is about being Black.
Right.
I need you all to understand we are more complex than just, we're not singular beings, to quote Fred Mobley. We're more complex than that. We're deep. I've seen some deep rivers, man. We are deep people. And understand that when you encounter me, I'm a deep person. Dig? Another question?
Yeah.
Someone else asked what NYU alumni could do together because it's such a diverse and big group.
Well, we do have Lisa Coleman, who's heading up the diversity and inclusion at NYU, and she hosted an amazing talk last night, again, which I listened to. I don't know, Noel, if you listened.
Yeah, it was good. And I'm on the diversity council, so we're doing some things there. But I might as well say now, there's a small group of us in terms of professors and art world creatives and thinkers and just critical thinkers in general, we started as a reading group that does kind of smaller interventions, and now we're thinking about using our platform at NYU to bring in other creatives to figure out how we can produce a sustained effort. All I can tell you that by now, but I can't tell you the name or anything like that. It's really secret, you see.
Well, people can also give money to the Gray Art Gallery. We'd love to have more funds to hire interns. If you're an NYU alum and want to support, I won't turn away funds.
You know what? I'll say this one more thing. I think for faculty, listen to your students. Listen to them, because they have feelings and they have value. And I feel like a number of them right now, having never been in this kind of struggle, are starting to think they don't have value.
No, it's very, very, very challenging time. And I think listening and again, responding. And, we've been usually we had staff meetings once a week, and we've now gone to Zoom meetings. We had for a while every other day because everybody's hurting, everybody's exhausted, all for different reasons and, different experiences. But this is very, very, very challenging time. And, these are big problems. COVID just amplified the issues that, for our Black brothers and sisters and people of color, are, just suffering so much more from COVID. There's a lot that needs fixing, including our very democracy. And so this is, one of those moments that, again, real change hopefully can occur, and it won't be just passing by or platitudes or slogans, that it'll go deeper than that.
Yeah, I think COVID also not just amplified, but I think it also created more visibility around these topics, right? And it definitely grabbed people's attention.
Yeah, but for that's the thing that I'm not quite sure. I want to say quite sure, but I would advocate in terms of faculty being more sensitive. This really, let's have that come to Jesus moment for a second, y'all. This really exposed some real big gaps in my at least in my student population that I was not familiar with. Students who have access to things versus students who don't have access to things, right? Requiring students to get online when some of them are like, look, I don't even have a computer to deal with this right now, right? Opening a Zoom class at, 6 o'clock in the evening in New York and seeing half the population in their pajamas in bed and not having the capacity to say, are you tired because it's 2 a.m. there, or are you mentally fatigued because you can't deal with this today, right? These are the sensitivities or the conditions in which we have to be more sensitive to our students, right? This whole logic of, students need to be tougher. We didn't breed them for that. We did not breed this generation of student to just suck it up and be tougher, right? We didn't. And if we really want these students to go out and do something, then we need to radically change how we're talking to them and relating them into real time. Because if we don't, then I'm scared, man, because they scare me. If they don't have a total transvaluation or valorization of self and they can't speak for themselves, well, what the fuck are we doing? Sorry.
No, thank you. I mean, we spoke about this in the beginning of the week, and you really addressed these inequalities amongst your students. Like, how do you think that NYU can address these things? Or
right, it's like, yo, I mean, we try the whole, assuming everyone has digital platform, then we'll just give them access to Adobe Suite. Well, yeah, let's assume everyone has a phone. You can't do Photoshop on your phone. What is that? So to be honest, a real come to Jesus moment, or come to your religious figure, my mother, would be to realize that there are a lot of folks who don't have, and the system will have to give, right? And it's not like this fear mongering of socialism that occurs on the right or something. Fox News, what? It's just a reality that if you want the world to be better, you have to give up things. That's just it.
You know, yeah, Lisa Corrin's anxious to contribute.
Please.
Lisa?
Okay, I'm here. Thank you. Noel, I'm so happy to meet you. I'm the director of the Block Museum at Northwestern University.
Oh, pleasure to meet you as well, ma'am.
And I've really appreciated your comments this afternoon. So here's what I'd like to contribute. You know, I really believe that what's lacking in institutions is a connection between values and structures. Mm. The work that needs to be done, I think, is where there's an agreement by the staff, and that means the staff in its entirety and the board, of what the highest value priorities are. And then there needs to be a correlative to that in the way money is spent and allocated. Mm. So if equity is your priority, that means that how you pay people matters. It means whether you're free or not matters. And directors have the ability, and this has happened in the city of Baltimore, where in order to be more equitable, they made a case, the two major art museums, to their boards and to their governor, to make sure that these museums were free in a city that is not particularly wealthy and museums that don't have particularly large endowments. So I really do think that, as daunting as this moment may feel to museums, particularly when it comes to making structural change, this is the moment to do that. And the organizations that have always done this are the small ones. You're quite right, they're working from the margins. And when I look back on what the work that I've most admired, or even the work I've been able to do, it's not been at MoMA. I've seen it in the alternative spaces, God rest many of their souls at this point, and at smaller college and university art museums, where they can pivot in relationship, in response to a moment like this. Look at this, the scaffolding that holds up their programs and their ways of being in the world and their missions, and can turn the ship very, very quickly. And they're the ones that often become the models that are most studied, frankly, also by the larger institutions. And that's where a place like the Gray is so valuable, because it can do that, because of its scale. On the one hand, I'm sure Lynn would wish she had more resources. On the other hand, it's exactly the scale they are that lets them to do what they do. This is the kind of contradiction.
I don't want a bigger building. I don't want more staff. It's, you know, I mean, I agree. And this is why, you know, it's such a joy to work with Lisa and her colleagues at the Block, because we really try to make a difference and really are trying, not always successful, and we all make mistakes, which is like artists work, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it is about pivoting and providing models and coming up with different solutions. And written into the Gray's mission statement, I don't know about the Block, but is a laboratory, you know, trying to, that's part of our DNA, is to try and experiment. And we've done that via exhibitions, but also about structures. And again, thanks to Martha Wilson and Marcia Tucker and others that, you know, we all admire. You know, change can occur, but it's slow. And within the mainstream art world, you know, it's challenging, but doable.
But that's also why I think we need Black curation.
Absolutely.
Black curation will provide a platform for a specific kind of voice and vision that, no offense to those beyond the melanin spectrum, just don't have through experience, right? So I think Black curation is holistically advocated. There's some amazing Black curators, specifically women, who are just dominating the game right now, giving Black men opportunities that Black men need to thank them for, quite frankly. But sorry.
I like. I'm sorry, excuse me. No, go ahead. Please. I didn't. No. I want to be respectful. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh yeah, but I was finished. Black curation.
Okay, I just want to say that we have a curator at the Block Museum named Janet Dees. Janet is an expert on African American art and also has a commitment to Indigenous and Native American art. And she's working on an exhibition that she's been working on for 5 years, and we hired her at the Block 5 years ago to actually bring this exhibition to us. It's called Site of Struggle: Representations of Anti-Black Violence in American Art and Visual Culture. And it's bracketed between the failed project of Reconstruction and the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. It's an exhibition that I think where it's going to make two important contributions. The first is that it's going to provide a historical context for where we've been in the last 2 weeks, and it makes the point that anti-Black violence it's not a new thing, and that historic amnesia that our country deals with, particularly with young people, is incredibly important. And I think the exhibition will really deal with that. The second thing is that what is the responsibility of museums for showing work like yours, Noel? You know, which I looked at online before I, got on here today, so I can become familiar with your work. And so when you show images like this, you have a responsibility to the artist and to the public. How do you lay a foundation for engaging in advance so that what happened recently in Cleveland does not happen? Okay. The cancellation of a very important exhibition, and then the contrite message of a director over images by a wonderful artist, Sean Leonardo, who had the right groundwork been laid, and had the Black community not been seen as monolithic, but as truly diverse within itself. An exhibition that could have stimulated tremendous discussion within that city that needs it so badly. And Janet, who is African American, is really the leader of this project for the Block. And we see it as not just an exhibition, but an opportunity for transforming on our campus and in the city of Evanston, which is still a very segregated city, a way of catalyzing the kinds of conversations that can continue to keep the moment we're in alive, moving forward with real action.
Right.
So I agree with you about who is curating. It matters. It absolutely matters to everything that we do.
Right, but it requires, that's brilliant. I like that. It requires a museum that has the wherewithal, or a team that can has already developed community relations, or can facilitate through the artist those community relations, right? So when I do shows at museums, I have a team with me when we figure out what's the best way to utilize my time at a space. So we do things like, and not just do the artist talk or whatever, but we go to elementary, we go to K through 12 schools and do programming with them, right? We do things like that. I do walkthroughs with schools. I do the legwork, right? We should do the legwork, but I say this to say it's not incumbent just on the institution, but the artists need to do it too, right? Derek Adams, Baltimore, I love it. The brother is doing it, right? Sean is doing it. Simone Lee, she is doing it, right? I just think that artists also have to realize this whole, like, let's blame the institution. That's one thing, but we also have to realize as artists, we have agency too, and duty and responsibility. As such, we need to not just make the work. Sometimes we got to go out and we got to sell the work. And sell the work isn't, I'll sell the shadow. I don't care about the object. I care about the goddamn idea. If I can get into the institution and sell the object and get time with the children, then maybe we can sell the idea. Someone asked me last week, how does hate get born? I said, hate gets born in the photograph of the boy wearing the 3-year-old wearing the Klan hood. He doesn't know any better. So by the time he turns 20, he doesn't do nothing but hate. How do you undo 20 years of hate? How does that work? Well, it's a collective effort. It's group shows. It's the thing that Simone and some other ladies did at the New Museum. It is giving up the ego. It is sacrificing the self for the better good of the goddamn group. That's what it is. And the art world, I'm with you, Anthony. The art world proper does not advocate sacrificing individualism for a greater cause. What it advocates is we have a soloist, we have one person, and that one person is it. And that one person has a style. But I just don't think that's the way it should work. I also think that if we realize how valuable the margins is, or how valuable the margins are, we have some real ruckus in place.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Anne?
No, I wanted to thank you, Noel and Lynn, for speaking.
Sure.
I wanted to ask if you guys wanted to end on something for this conversation.
Sure, Lynn first, please.
No, thank you. It was always meant to be a dialogue, and we got some interesting, blunt responses, and didn't solve everything, but was happy to participate.
Who solves 400 plus years of hatred and
Institutional racism.
in 1 hour? Man, I'd be God, but I can't. I'm not Jordan.
Yeah, but I think you contributed some new ideas, and I think that it was great. So,
some of those ideas, I'll finish by saying this. Some of those ideas can be found in the essay that I wrote for eFlux. But I would say this to everyone. I think, at least I recognize my time in this earth will be however long it'll be. I now recognize my duty. If you believe it's your duty too, please join us. Because, like Nina Simone said, she didn't say this, I say this. If my ancestors were slaves and they worked so hard to be here, and I can't do my part, and I gotta die one day and go home and see them, and my great-great-great-grandmother's gonna look at me and be like, you didn't do enough. No, that's not gonna happen to me. When I go home, I will have done mine. I'm not coming back here because I didn't do enough. And I hope that you all, when you go home, you will have done yours. You dig?
thank you. That's the perfect way to end.
Thank you for having me.
I just posted the link to the website where you can find Noel's work today.
Oh, thank you.
And his statements and his article. So please, if you want to follow up, feel free to visit the website, Art at a Time Like This. Thank you all. And
thanks for having me.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.